about the young corners with Caillou and Darian, but Stokes has been real consistent for you guys. What stood out to you about his game?
So one, the attributes in terms of physical, like he's long, he's fast, he's physical, does a solid job tackling, so that stuff stands out. And then when he's presented with a one-on-one matchup or a one-on-one challenge, he's done a good job of stepping up to the plate in terms of handling that. Playing penalty-free for the most part, that's a big part of it too. And just his veteran leadership. As a joke, his nickname is E. They call him E and different stuff. Like, he's strictly business. Like, to me, as an old school cat, EPMD, strictly business. I'm trying to get it to catch on. It's not catching on right now.
Talk about playing like clean football from him. George Pickens has drawn the most pass interference calls in the league. Is that a skill for a receiver to be able to do something like that?
He's so talented. He's so talented. In terms of size, speed, ability to catch the ball, catch radius, and then the ability to flash his hands late and just the savviness, and then after the catch and then his willingness to block in there. This guy's he's a skilled athlete. And is it a skill? I don't know, but just the way he's able to slow down and catch the ball, probably would count as a skill. Again, I'm not going to make any comparisons because, again, I'm talking about a person I used to see in practice a bunch of times, Randy Moss, who's the best ever to do it. But I'm not making that comparison. But I've seen flashes of that type of play before.
Just when you look back at the Denver film, kind of just what stood out to you guys? What were you able to do defensively that you like?
What stood out, we got to do a better job. Myself, starting with me first, we got to do a better job finishing. But I was really happy on a short week. The guys, their effort, how they played, executing what we asked them to do, gave Denver some different looks, stuff that we asked them to get done in the short week, the attention to detail throughout the week. Again, Sunday, want the wins and losses, and that's the most important thing. Real proud of the process in terms of how those guys went through the week. And, they saw some success out there on the field. We just got to, again, just win. That's what we got to do. We got to do whatever it takes to win. So that's where we're at.
What would just the benefit of having Lonnie Johnson back out there as safety?
Anytime you have good football players back, it's always positive. He's a big physical safety, does a good job communicating. He's fast, obviously. And his energy is infectious, so that was a positive there.
When you see Caillou developing how he is and picking up those 2 interceptions he had in the last game, how encouraging is that for you to see one of the younger players starting to step up?
It's great, just, again, youth, experience, it's how they perform on Sundays and Thursdays and this week, Monday. It's how they perform. So, again, whether they're a rookie, they're a 10-year vet, it's how you perform. And, these guys, that for their whole lives, they've been, they've seized the opportunity in different stages of their career. I was happy for them to see them go get the ball and seize the moment. And then to get 2, that was pretty impressive. So, but we have a tough task ahead of us with Dallas. Really good quarterback, one of the best in the league. Skill group's outstanding. So, every week is a reset. Luckily we get a few extra days this week.
What is Lonnie Johnson's contribution when you watch back the film, and what does his presence do for some of the other guys on the team?
Like I said, just his energy is infectious, and then just in terms of the attributes on the field, he's big, he's fast, and he's physical. So, at that safety position, really, that's what we're looking for on defense, period, all positions. Long, fast, physical guys. So, that's obviously a positive for us.
And stepped up to the plate, pretty much every time that you guys were called upon against Denver after the fourth quarter and everything against Jacksonville.
It's loaded. Again, just 4 years. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. All I care about is winning. All those dudes care about is winning. So that's what we put all win. So am I proud how they did sudden change? Yes. Am I proud when they made stops? Yes. But to a man, and again, y'all can ask them, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. All they care about is winning. That's it. So it's like loaded. I can't. Just gotta win. He obviously didn't get the reference. I could tell by. Did you get the reference?
What's that?
Eric, yeah, see, never mind. Okay, go ahead.
You see teams avoiding his side of the field, and I guess what does that do for the rest of the defense?
I don't know. You look at it year to year, week to week. You look at what your matchups are, and in the past we've spun coverages different ways based on guys and things of that nature. But I'm just glad that when they challenge him, that he's there and ready to play. So, but it's an interesting piece to have, and I'm glad he's on our team. All right, thank you.
First half of this season that you can really apply the second half?
Well, I think there's a lot. The difference in our offense is, when you look at where we had, you had Jacoby the first half of the season, you don't have him in the second half of the season. So receivers like Tuck and Locke and Jack and Dante and Bach have to step up to fill that void. So there's a difference in terms of who you have out wide. Obviously, in the offensive line, there's been some shuffling going on because you lost Colton and then you lost JPJ. So just moving those guys around. So, I think our guys that have stepped up have done a nice job, but that's an ongoing process, and that's what happens in this league. One of them we lost to a trade, and two players we lost to injury, so they're out for a while. So it's just kind of filling those gaps in terms of where they are, and then seeing how they mesh. Now with JPJ out this week because he was in, the last couple of weeks, then there's going to be a new guy in the offensive line. So how do those guys mesh? So kind of seeing how that whole group fits together that way.
And how challenging is block is either playing hurt or just out? How tough was it just trying to get in your system you want to get in?
It is. It's the NFL, though. I think everybody understands that. I don't think there's anybody in the league right now that hasn't lost players that were starters for them. That's just the nature of the game we play, and you have to be able to adjust and adapt. Your depth is going to get tested at all times, and so you just have to adjust to it. You don't sit there and say, "Oh, boy, I wish we had him." We'd love to have Brock in every game. We'd love to have Colton Miller in every game. I think people forget what an integral player he was. He was playing as good as any offensive tackle in the league before he got injured. And so that's a shuffling that goes on there. So, but it's part of it, and I think I'll give our players a ton of credit. They've done a great job adjusting, and hey, we got to do this. And really, you'd like to say from a week-to-week basis, we're building and growing in this direction, but when you lose a player, all of a sudden the offense has to change slightly because there's a newer player in and you're trying to play to his strengths. And maybe hide his weaknesses as opposed to another player. This player may have excelled at this, and that was a big part of the game plan. Well, now that he's out, you got to kind of morph to a different thing. Even though we'd really like to continue to do that, I don't know if we can do that because we don't have that player at that position. So.
On the back end of that, how do you manage the balance between making sure Brock isn't like force-fed in coverage, but also making sure he gets more opportunities?
Yeah, it's the same thing. We have to get him involved. He's obviously our number one threat out there, and we got to continue to get him involved in terms of what we do. Jacksonville and New England were a good example. We didn't do a good job. I didn't do a good job in the Denver game. A lot of those plays that were supposed to go to him, we got sacked on. And part of that was the protection and what Denver could do defensively going in. We knew they had a great pass rush, and so we were in a little bit more max protection. And now you're not being able to uncover them sometimes. So you allow them to double them and do those other things. But part of their scheme allows them to do that too. So, but we're real conscious of knowing what do we have available this week, and how do we have to get the ball to those guys?
You guys have been held to under 10 points like 4 times this year. Just why has it been so hard for you guys?
I think it's different each week, as I said, because it's what's available each week. So who do you have player-wise and all that? We obviously have to execute. I think for us, we need to stay in a rhythm. And a lot of them, sometimes it's self-inflicted wounds in terms of penalties or things like that we get a drive going and we're moving in the right direction. You can feel the rhythm and you can feel what the players are doing. But then all of a sudden, you get into a long yardage situation. So instead of being in 3rd and 3, you're in 3rd and 13. And in this league, 3rd and 13 is a real difficult deal to convert. I don't think many people are converting on 3rd and extra longs in this league just because of how the defenses are playing. So a lot of it, as we talk to our team about, is just not the self-inflicted wounds. The defense is going to make plays. These defenses in this league are really, really good, but it's the penalties, it's the drops, it's the turnovers that really hurt you on the offensive side of the ball, and those are things that we have to clean up, and that's on us. That's nothing that we can say, hey, they did a good job. If we don't give our hands where they're supposed to be and they're outside the framework of the body, and you're corralling somebody, then they're going to call a hold. Or do we line up in the right formations? All of those things are things that right now, because of some of the injuries and where we are, and you're really kind of thin, we can't afford to hurt ourselves. And that's, I think, in a lot of those drive situations, that's what's been happening to us.
Pete said yesterday how this season hasn't gone to how he anticipated to go when he took the job and going into the year. Just for you personally, how have you internalized it, and are you surprised at how the direction thing?
No, I don't think you can predict anything in this league. I mean, that's just the nature of this league. You kind of you go through it. And I also don't have the time to think about like what do I think game 12 and 13 and 14 is going to look like. Your focus has to be on really having a good, I don't even know what day this is. It's a Thursday for us, so having a really good Thursday. We just had a walkthrough, and then I'm gonna go watch that real quick, and then head out to the practice field and then get ready for our training session that afternoon, and then just keep thinking of that. But I don't think of, hey, I thought going into this we were going to be 10-6. Well, I think every coach going into it thinks you're going to be 17-0. That's just, you better think that way. If you've already chalked up losses in your brain, then you're in a world of hurt anyway. So don't really think long term, especially when you're in season. It's really a day-to-day thing, and can we stack a good Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday together so that we can play on Sunday.
Something that's coached college and NFL, and just recently, what's the biggest challenges facing offensive linemen that go from the college game to the NFL game?
I think schematically, some teams at the college level, it's a little bit, everything's a signal from the sideline, so they haven't really, they're not in a huddle. So those mechanics are a little bit different for them. That's a challenge. I think obviously when you're playing in college, you may play against a team that's got one good pass rusher, not three. So and they're so good in this league at isolating guys and getting players on certain players that it makes it hard, that you got to be really, really good in one-on-one situations, where in college you may have been in a lot of slide protection and you could just turn to that really good pass rusher and not let him get in. But, the defensive coordinators are really sharp in this league and don't allow you to do that. So sometimes it's the scheme that they may have only run 3 or 4 run plays and have 2 protections, where if you come to an NFL team, then you're going to have multiple run plays and, even more importantly, multiple protections, because if you don't have multiple protections, you're going to get eaten up in this league. So from a protection standpoint, I think is the biggest thing that stands out. And not that they don't have the skills and don't have the ability to do it, it's just they just haven't been exposed to it, and to have the volume of protections that you have in this league and that you need to have in this league because of the volume of defensive looks that people are going to give you. That's part of it. But even just the basics of sometimes just being in a huddle and hearing a play called and not relying on a signal. That's a whole different thing. A lot of the cadences at the NFL are different because a lot of the cadences are helping you check plays. And in college, the play's not checked. You may have a dummy play, and then you look over to the sideline, and the coaches give you a new play, and then you execute that play. Where here, there may be 2 or 3 plays called in the huddle, and Gino can get up and he can alert it, or he can kill it, or he can can it. And if one of those goes to one play, one of them goes to another play, another one goes to a third play. Where it's not that they can't do it; it's just they haven't been exposed to it enough where they got the experience at it. So it's an ongoing process, and it's just part of the business. I'll go there. I'll go there.
Pete had mentioned you guys really liked your performance offensively in the Jags game. What
Yeah.
are some things you point to from that one that you'd say, hey, this is who we want to be?
Well, I think you want to be a balanced football team, and I think we were really balanced in that game in terms of run pass, and that's always an ideal thing, is if the defense, when you put yourself in situations where you're not in pass exclusive situations, meaning 3rd and 11 you're probably passing, and everybody in the stadium knows it, everybody on defense knows it, and so you got to face some different situations. On 3rd and 2, you have the option to run the ball or pass the ball. They have to defend more of those things. So I think a lot of it, as I mentioned earlier, is staying in a rhythm offensively, where we were in a pretty good rhythm, where 1st and 10 went to a gain of 4 to 6. So now we're in a manageable 2nd and whatever. You can throw it or run it. You throw it and you get a 1st down, or you run it and now you're 3rd and 1. Now you can throw it or run it again. Then you get the 1st and 10 and now you can throw it and run it again. So I think we're in a better rhythm in that game. We didn't have the penalties that we had in that game. We didn't have the sacks that we had in that game. We didn't have the drops that we had in the last game. And I think those added up. And those are things we talk about. That's us offensively, that we're inflicting that on ourselves. A drop isn't because of defense. That's not a PBU. Like, we're not talking about eliminating PBUs. We're talking about eliminating a drop. We're talking about eliminating a penalty. We're talking about eliminating, holding up better in protection, being able to get the ball out a little bit quicker. And it's a fine line in this game. And it's we're 3 plays away from whatever. I don't know what our record is now. You're a 5-win team. You know what I mean? And you're battling. We missed 2 field goals and a 2-point conversion, but the game is that close, and it's every week is a battle. That's the beauty of the league, and the competitive nature of the league is you can't make those mistakes and expect that you're going to be successful. So we got to continue to correct them, and we got to be able to make sure that it's the defense that's stopping us. It's not us stopping us.
The
Cowboys are getting a couple guys back from injury. They also
Yeah.
added obviously some really talented players at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a challenge is it to try to figure out, I guess, what they're going to be and not necessarily what they've been when you're watching on film?
Yeah, Coach Eberflus has been around for a long time, so you can watch what he does and what he does schematically, but you add what he does schematically, which is challenging, and then add some more talented players, especially the guys coming off IR and then Quinnen that they added at the trade deadline, and that makes it a formidable front. To have those three inside kids. They traded for Kenny Clark. They signed Osa back, who everybody wanted Osa, and he's a heck of a player. And I had an opportunity to coach Osa in college. He's a tremendous player, but there's not many teams that the luxury of riches that they have at defensive tackle with Osa, Kenny, and now Quinnen. So it presents some problems, and I think because you haven't seen him on tape and how he's going to deploy them, there'll be some adjustments that go on at the beginning of that game.
Chip, what do you remember from the first time ever watching Brock Bowers? I believe UCLA offered him
Yeah.
back when he was in high school.
When he was in high school. Yeah, he was a California kid, saw him in Napa. Just a tremendous athlete. He played some quarterback, but you could tell that he just had a special skill set that was, he was obviously I think he may have been the number one tight end in the country coming out, as when he went to Georgia. But, it wasn't, you didn't have to watch the tape too long to say that this kid was going to be special. And it's his ability to run, but he runs with such power and he has such a base. And he's got an athletic ability of a wide receiver, but he's the size of a tight end. I think Brock could play multiple positions. He would have been a heck of a defensive player. If you wanted to play him at running back, I think he could play running back. I think he can do so many different things. But somebody that big, that strong, that powerful, but that can run that fast is truly unique, and that's what makes him, really what I think is the top tight end in this league.
And just going off of that, just why do you think it's so easy for him to create separation? Because when you look on film, it's like he's always open and always has open space to take advantage. So why is it so easy for him to create separation from defenders?
God. I don't know. I don't know if you could. There are not many people like Brock, and that's it. But I think the other thing with Brock that I don't know if people, his work ethic is outstanding, and what he does every single day, from film study to how he takes care of his body to the work he does in practice. And he's one of those truly special kids where when Coach Steck will take him out for a play, he's PO, he's pissed off, he wants that rep. And you're like, Brock, it's Wednesday. We got a game on Sunday, and I know, but I need to work. I need to work at the top of the route. Well, the ball's going on the other side. I don't care. I need to work on this. And it's just his dedication and his mindset in terms of getting so good at his craft is what really makes him such a special player, along with some God-given talent that not many people have. So.
With no JPJ, I know we've seen Alex step in a lot, but Caleb, is he progressing?
Yeah, Caleb's in the mix. I don't think Pete or anybody here has made a final decision on that. I think there's a combination of Caleb. Willie Putnam played in the game for us because he was up, so Putt's involved in that mix, and then Antonio Mafia, who's on our practice squad, is involved in that. So you've got Kappa, you got Will, and you got Caleb, and you got Antonio, and then we've got today, because today's really like a Thursday for us, so we still have 2 full practices. Thursday practice, Friday practice. In our minds, I know it's Friday, Saturday. Someone told us that today, but those 2 practices, and then I think they'll make a final determination on what direction they're going to go.
You're comfortable with where he's progressing at this point? Where are you in terms of your comfort level of how he's progressed, Caleb?
Yeah, Caleb's doing a good job. It goes back to what the question earlier is, that transition for all those guys. Caleb and Charles are the same thing. Caleb came from a Texas Tech Air Raid type offense, and they scored a lot of points and did a lot of really good things. And Charles is another one who came from William & Mary, so he's coming from an FCS level. But both of those guys are doing a really good job in their development.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.